Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to New Brit Workshop. I've recently been able to borrow some sanders from Festool UK. I made a video about them, and before they go back I thought, well, it might be a good idea to do a video about sanding with Festool in general. Now, I've been able to get hold of a number of sanders, and one or two belong to me, and also some other kit which I've bought recently, and I thought I'd just show you what I've got. Now, the Festool range of sanders is quite large, and there's no way I could do a video about them all. And so this is just my little take on sanding with Festool. Now, here's the lineup, and I'm going to start here because this is the first Festool sander that I bought. And this is the RO90, the Rotex 90. In actual fact, rather than being one sander, like all the Rotex sanders, it's got two modes, but this one's got a third mode, so really this is three sanders in one. We'll get to that a little later. This is the big Rotex sander. This is the Rotex 150. And then we have the RTS 400, that's mains operated. The DTS 400, again mains operated. And here we have, this is an absolutely lovely sander. It's the ETS EC 150 Oblique 3. The Oblique 3 means it's got a 3mm stroke. And then if you've seen my recent video, then these are the three cordless sanders. There's the ETS C 125, the RTS C 400, and the DTSC 400. And now, these are the little extras that people either forget or actually don't know about at all. I have mentioned recently that I bought some Festool sanding blocks, and these are granite on a sponge block. The sponge has a little bit of give in it, so it's stiff enough for you to be able to do ordinary flat sanding, but it's also slightly bendy, so on a very slight curve you can actually get in and do the sanding. And they come in packs of 6. Then I discovered, now this is a recent discovery and this is my own ignorance, that you can buy sandpaper from Festool. And I buy granite because it really is, as far as I'm concerned, the very best sandpaper that they do. And I've got 240 grit, and I've also got under here 120 grit granite sheets. And those are very modestly priced. It works out, I bought these from Axminster, and these worked out at about 36 pence a sheet. Now, what I don't have here, and I really wish I had this, Festool do a hand sanding block, which takes the same paper as the RTS sanders, and it's perforated, that paper, and the hand sanding block can be connected to your extractor. And that's quite a neat idea. And so you could be doing some quite delicate hand sanding work, but still have the benefit of the extractor. Now, I can use every one of these sanders on a project which I'm working on right now. I've got an old chest of drawers here. It's quite old. All of it is veneered, and the drawers are bow-fronted. Now, this has had a lot of abuse in its lifetime. It's never really been properly polished, and it's in places it's been left in the direct sunlight, and it's faded and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to do my best to clean it up. I've already done some of the work before I had the idea of making this video, so I'm sorry about that. I've actually done most of the work on the main carcass, including there's this little pull-out shelf that pulls out, and I've re-veneered parts of this recently, and so that's something I've done already. But I've not quite finished the top of this, and so I've got that to do, and I've got the curved fronts of the drawers to do. And that's one of the areas where I think I can really actually make some progress with some of the sanders that we've got behind me. Now, all of the flat sanding that I've done so far on the main carcass, I used my ETS EC 150. And I was using a stock of some old Rubin paper I've got, and it's all 180 grit. And the key thing is when you're doing flat surfaces is to make sure you've got a hard sanding pad. And in Festool that means the colour blue. And that way you're less likely to cause undulations in the surface because you can glide over it quite nicely. Now the ETS EC150, I have made a video about this sander and I consider it to be one of the most beautiful sanders going. And the reason is it's so easy to use it one-handed. It's got a nice big pad here and it is a really, really good finishing sander. But if you were to put 80 grit on this and you had some task to do where you needed to do some removal of wood, you know, some real work, then this can handle it. There is a second version of this, which is the 150 Oblique 5, which has a 5mm stroke instead of the 3mm stroke of this one. But I found this one quite good at doing some of those harder tasks with coarser grit paper. And here's an example where I did use some 80 grit paper with the ETS, and that was on the drawer sides. These were in a pretty bad state. They had years of grime on them. There was bits of old polish which had got in there and was all sticky and nasty, and it was just a real bad job. They'd never really been finished properly even when it was manufactured, and so this coped with it very nicely with that coarser paper. And then I finished off eventually with a 180 grit, again just with the same sander. Now I could have used for that task the Rotex 150 because that's got the capability of doing this sort of thing with absolutely no problem at all. Now although people think this is a pretty tough big boy sander, actually it can be used for some quite delicate work. And one of the things I'm going to do as a demonstration is I'm going to go back to the top that I've already finished and I'm going to go over it using this sander. Now you can do quite delicate work with this if you wish, but I've used this one in the past for making oak garden benches with just sawn oak, which I've then sanded. So it's not gone through a planing machine at any stage, and this has made a wonderful job. And I've made videos about that in the past. You might wish to look those up. Now you can probably see that the sides are quite detailed. They're flat here and then they gently curve here. And that's a rather pleasing sort of shape. Now, in order to sand that curved area, in fact the whole of this bottom area, I used my little Rotex 90 but with a soft pad. Now having a soft pad is perfect when you need to do a curved section. I have made a video about the Rotex 90 quite a while ago. It's got 3 modes. It can either operate in a quite aggressive rotary mode where the head is spinning constantly. It can operate in a sort of a random orbital mode, but also the third mode for this is a delta mode. And if I just take the current sanding pad off, then I can put on a delta pad. And that slips on very easily. And so this sander now has this role as a delta sander, and that is really, really useful. And that's the reason this was the first Festool sander that I bought. And I've dropped it from almost the top of my house once when I was doing the fascia boards. I left it out in the rain one day, no, admittedly not for very long, probably for about half an hour. Dried it out carefully. It's survived quite nicely. And you can see it has seen a fair bit of action, but it's really, really good. Tough sander, never given me any trouble at all. Now, as a quick tip, if you have one of these sanders already, or if you're thinking of getting one, every now and again when you take the sanding pad off, just look inside here. It does accumulate a little bit of dust and it's really easy to give it a clean. Just turn on your vacuum. I did use a brush just to poke in around there as I was vacuuming, and this is the route that the dust takes. It goes through the pad, through here, and then out the port there. And so it's a good idea to get in there, give it a clean every now and again, and that improves the dust collection efficiency no end. Now the drawer front started like this, and I don't know whether the camera can actually pick up the real appearance of this. It's pretty awful. There's a lot of cracked, I was going to say varnish. It ought to have been French polish, but I've got a sneaky suspicion someone's varnished this at one stage. And there's some distressing to the veneer as well underneath. It's not terribly good. Now I've had a go at one of them, just cleaning it up. And for this, I use the RTS 400. But I'm going to have a go now with the RTSC 400 on a drawer which I'm in the middle of doing, and I hope to be able to demonstrate just how useful it is at getting right up to an edge like this. So I put some 180 grit granite on this RTSC 400, and I'm now going to give this a go. Now this is interesting because when I did the first one using the corded machine, which has the dust extractor hose coming out the back, it was not as easy as this. I didn't appreciate that there is a role for a cordless sander in a normal workshop. This is easier to handle because you're not encumbered by either a lead or the hose. Now the useful thing about the RTS format is that you can get right into an edge and right up to an edge like that. And I know there will be a tiny bit which I won't be able to sand right in the very corner. Well, I could do that by hand in a minute. One of the things that people are worried about is sanding all the way through the veneer. And it's a risk, and I've actually done it, and I'll show you a piece in a minute, on this particular project. And there are ways of sort of recovering from that if you have to. But generally speaking, if you've got 180 grit or higher, then you're going to have to sand quite a bit to go through a veneer. Unless, of course, it's already very thin due to previous work that's been done on the piece. So I'm happy with the state of that. Now I need to think about how I'm going to get into these edges here. I think my favourite will be the sanding block. Now I've only got 120 grit, but I think with care I can get in there quite well. Now one could also use some type of solvent to do this. I don't intend to use any solvents at all, and I'm going to be staining this back to a sort of Georgian mahogany colour, and I've bought some spirit stain from Axminster already to do just that. So all I'm trying to do is get this bit to blend in so it doesn't look too stark. And of course the mains powered RTS 400 is going to be equally as good at doing this task. In fact, I am expecting it to be a little bit better on dust collection. Super. Now after I rubbed this down the first time, I had a session of filling and I had some awful marks to fill. Basically, over the years, some various puppies had bitten and chewed all of the bottom area here. I've filled most of it. There's just a bit I've missed, I've just noticed. So I'm going to mix up some more stuff. And I don't know if this is available anywhere other than, I think it was France I got it. It's a filler, it's a water-based filler, and it dries rock hard, and it does take stain quite nicely, including spirit stain. And so that's what I've got. I'm just going to mix it up with some water and apply it to this area here. Well, there it is mixed up, and I find one of the easiest things to use to apply it is keep your old credit cards and things like that, particularly those which are made of the thinner plastic, and cut them into strips and use them as little spatulas. That you could almost put it on like a plasterer would, and then just leave it to dry and sand it. It sands very easily, and it does stick very nicely to the wood.